I do these things, I guess you call them like environment design, if you will, because I have no willpower and self-control. So I like lock my fridge because intermittent fasting is really helpful for me in order to be productive. But I also really like food. So what I do is I lock my fridge and put it in a timed box, and I set it until 12 p.m.
You put your entire fridge in a timed box?
No. There's fridge locks, right? Okay. And I put the keys of the fridge lock into a timed box.
That's very impressive to put your whole fridge.
Just like my entire fridge into a box. But yes, I put the keys in there until 12 p.m. every single day. So that's how I get myself to fast.
So I got really into self-hypnotism recently.
I lock my fridge, you just hypnotize yourself.
And I promise it's not as weird as you think. Tina, welcome back to the Ken's Nearest Neighbors podcast. It's been a while since we've done like a one-on-one one. You've been in a couple group podcasts, but I'm visiting San Francisco. We've spent a lot of time working together, catching up, and excited to share and learn about some of the things you're working on right now.
I'm very happy to be back again.
Excellent. Well, obviously, a big part of your life is YouTube. A large part of your life is, again, content, courses, education, learning, and these types of things. And I'm wondering, we haven't really talked as much about how your life has progressed in terms of YouTube growth, right? Has your life changed since you've started growing a lot more on those social platforms, as well as after essentially leaving your data science job?
Oh, absolutely. Like my life has I don't want to say it completely changed, but it's dramatically changed. And it's changed in a way that I don't think I could ever go back to what previously, because I think I'm a lot more aligned now with the vision that I have for myself in my life.
So what is the vision that you have for yourself in your life? Maybe that's like really deep end really early, but.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like for me, kind of like, obviously the people's vision, I think it takes a while to figure out like certain things. Obviously I don't exactly know what I want to do when I grow up, and I'm already very grown up. But there's certain things that I know. Like I know that I want independence is a huge part of it. I want to be able to explore things that I'm interested in, and I also like to do like multiple parallel things at the same time because I get bored easily. So I love the fact that I do content creation, and then I also do other projects as well. Freedom is like the biggest thing for me. I want location freedom, so financial freedom first of all. I think all of us can agree with that part. Yeah, it's like, so financial freedom is a big one, location freedom, because I do want to like travel a lot. I want to do these things. I also want time freedom, which is the ability to do the things that I'm interested in doing, like with different times, right? Because like, for example, I know that I operate well in certain times. So having like a 9-to-5 job, for me at least, it was very stressful because the time I would always be on call for things, and I'm not operating on my best during that time. So that's like kind of just how I see my life progressing, like so many ideas that I had, so many things that I wanted to do. Just having the job that I had previously, not that it wasn't good, it was amazing. It was an amazing job. I wasn't able to fulfill a lot of parts that I was interested in doing. So after that, because my time is completely within my control now, I'm able to shape the career that I want for myself.
I think that's really important. It's also been really valuable for me is that it's not that I work less per se. I probably work more than I did before. I mean, I obviously still have more of a traditional job than you do, but the fact that I can control when I do the work, I could work a ton one week and none the next, or I can move things around, and that is in some sense freedom, but it's also not freedom because you still have to do certain things to get by or to make money. I'm also interested in this broader concept of, freedom is a very important thing for you, but that directly clashes with other values occasionally. So for example, freedom is somewhat clashing with, for example, like family, or it's somewhat clashing with the idea of, companionship or the idea of consistency. And I think a lot of people struggle to reconcile those things. Do you have any thoughts on how you've gotten around reconciling those things in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of working more, I actually do work more than I previously did, like 100% I do. but the things that I work on are a lot more satisfying for me. So it actually doesn't feel as much. Like I would be really burnt out previously, and I don't feel like that. Do I work harder? Yes, but I also feel like the things that I do are a lot more meaningful. So what you bring up is really interesting. I think the definitions of like what freedom is it's something that we do have to clearly define. Like for me, freedom just means doing the things that I want to do without too much consideration about what someone else, like a boss, for example, is telling me to do. It's allowing me, like for me, like I want to prioritize my family, right? So I'm like, oh, like my family's a lot of them are in China. I can go to China to see them. So it's more about my values, like freedom to pursue my values. That's how I would personally define freedom. Consistency, like the self-study and consistency is also really important to me. So freedom is the ability of doing that without, say, for example, a boss saying that, oh, like we have to work on this now. And you can't like pursue your consistent learning, for example.
So is it that your work now is fundamentally different than it was before? And the different nature of the work is easier for you to do because you have more energy to do it? Or it's that you just have more control over the work, and the control means that you have more of a battery to like context switch when you get tired of a certain type of task? Does that make sense? Where it's like, because I think everyone has essentially a budget for the amount of effort they can put in on certain types of tasks. Like I can only code for maybe 3 hours a day at max, and then I'm completely cooked. But if I do some other activities, even work activities, I can sort of recharge that bar at some point in time. Do you have a system or a structure that works in a similar way?
Yeah. So is the nature of my work actually that different? No, not really. It's actually very, very similar. But in my mind, it feels really different because I guess I'm just like a control freak. I like the idea of the fact that I'm able to do the things that I think is the most meaningful during the times that I want to be able to do so, right? That's like, it makes a really big difference. And also the timing of things. That actually is a huge difference for me. So like, it's like I rearrange my time in a way that, for example, if I'm gonna code, I have to do it in the morning. Like if I just die pretty much after I eat lunch, and I cannot do that kind of work anymore. But when I had my job previously, I can't just be like, I'm only gonna work in the morning and not show up to anything afternoon, right? So that makes a huge difference for me. Sorry, what was the second part of your question?
If you have time budgets or like energy budgets for certain activities, because to me, that's something I'm constantly mindful of is what types of tasks are particularly draining and what types of tasks are energizing or rejuvenating. And sometimes there are work tasks that I can do that actually improve my overall energy. And some completely detract. I mean, for example, we've talked about how differently we are when we record video. Like for me, recording video is like, it's like nothing. But the scripting and some of these other things are a lot harder. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I might be putting words in your mouth, but I think the like actual recording process is a lot more tiring for you. Like you have to block a full day to do that comparatively.
Yeah, I'm like the other way around. Like thinking about what I'm gonna say is very fast for me, but the actual process of recording, it takes a lot. It takes a lot more out of me because I'm pretty freeform. Like I just like talk. And my poor editor has to like listen to me talk for 3 hours at a time to get a 10-minute
Tony.
Yeah. So like, I think another big thing for me is the fact that like there are certain things I'm very good at doing, and there's certain things I'm absolutely terrible at doing. I'm kind of like that as a person. I think I'm pretty extreme in the sense that it's like things that I'm good at, I think I'm pretty good at, and the things I'm not very good at, I'm just like terrible at. So what it has freed me up is when you have a normal job or whatever you want to call it, you can't like outsource parts of it. I guess you could, but that's kind of unethical. But for me, I'm like, I know that the things I'm not good at, I would outsource that to somebody who is in fact good at doing that thing, which means I spend most of my time doing things that I am good at and I am interested in.
Interesting. So how has that changed, or do you foresee that changing with AI or like tools like ChatGPT? To me, there's a lot more ability to outsource, especially actual coding, which has been a very large shift for me in my personal life. I'm wondering how that impacts you.
Good transition there. For sure. I think ChatGPT, just AI, has fundamentally changed my life. Like I can very honestly say that it has. both in terms of my work, but also my personal life as well. It's just like, especially the way that I do like that I code now. It's just like, I'm sure you've also like experienced this, absolutely different now. Like Stack Overflow, I haven't looked at Stack Overflow ever since I started like using ChatGPT, which is insane because I would be previously, it's like 2 tabs open, pretty much like always the 2 tabs that are open is like Stack Overflow and whatever you're doing, right? Like your terminal. That has just absolutely changed for me. It's made me like far more productive. The nature in which that I just do things now, in code and in business, it's just so much, it's just fundamentally changed and it's far more productive as well. So a lot of the outsourcing I was talking about for sure. I'm actually going to be like building out more like personal projects that outsource things for me that I currently like have problems with. Like one of my videos that will be coming out, I don't know when it's the timing of it, but I'm actually going to be coding myself a babysitter. I like don't have the ability of motivating myself to do certain things. And I would always like, I'll be like, okay, like Tina, you have to do this today. And then by the end of the day, I'm like, oh my God, like I didn't do the thing I was supposed to do. So I'm going to code myself a babysitter essentially, who's just going to be like reminding me the thing that I'm supposed to do or like things like that, right? So I'm able to outsource a lot of this. I actually have tried hiring someone before to be my babysitter. Yeah, like this is something that I really think ChatGPT has really opened up to people. And I also think people who do know how to code, it's such a big advantage at this point because it allows you to really harness that power. Also just wanted to like make a point saying, I know like a lot of people are talking about like, oh, like, should I still pursue coding? Should I still do these things? Even though like with AI coming, they might like they might be taking a lot of our jobs, right? And in my opinion, like, yes, are they going to be automating a lot of jobs? I personally do believe so, like at least in the longer run, I really do think so. But I don't think that should be a detractor for people because there's so much that people who know how to code, like how much advantage that you have right now is like, it's pretty crazy. And all the companies, all the businesses that are trying to integrate AI into their business, that can be all things that you can help them with in the future.
That's something I've been realizing more recently, and just talking to people in industry has really opened my eyes about, is who is the best suited for jobs in an AI driven world. Let's say AI continues to get adopted at a really rapid pace. Who are the best people to work in that domain with these tools? I would argue it's probably people who study computer science, people who understand product as well. And if you have that skill set, maybe you're not going to be doing traditional coding. Maybe you're not going to necessarily use that exact skill set. But the idea of giving instructions on how to build a product, a solution, or whatever that might be, that is one of the main skills that you learn in computer science. I mean, if you think back at our coursework, at least in my computer science, my master's in computer science coursework, the first thing you do is write pseudocode. You're always writing pseudocode because that's agnostic to language. With ChatGPT, essentially all programming is heading towards being language agnostic. And the important thing is being able to write pseudocode or describe what you want. And I think that skill, probably in the intermediary, is going to be unbelievably important. Maybe in the long term, even that will be sort of usurped or taken over by AI. But I think if you're studying these more technical fields, you're going to be moving with that AI crowd. You're going to be moving with this tool set. You're going to be moving with this trend. And that's a really good place to be. I mean, we'll probably start seeing schools have AI specializations or prompting or integration or whatever it might be. But realistically, schools are also kind of far behind. So you're probably in a really good position, either studying just CS or learning these things online and getting ahead that way.
Absolutely. I kind of equate this to say like, it's my, like, I would say it's almost like the internet showed up, right? And then the people who really took advantage of the internet by adopting that technology are the ones that in the long run not only win, but from like an ethical perspective, they're the ones that get to shape what happens in the future, right? Well, on the other hand, like people who are like, oh my God, like this internet is going to come take my job, they're the ones that are like, I will try to get away from the internet and try to protect myself from it. But it touches their lives. And like, you know, like whose lives okay, how do I say this? Like there's very few people in which the internet does not touch their lives at all. And I really, in my opinion, I believe it's the same thing with AI. The early adopters are going to be the ones that will be benefiting the most from it and will be shaping the future of it.
I'd like to take a quick second to thank one of our sponsors, Pathrise. Job hunting can be daunting, particularly in today's unpredictable world. Pathrise matches you with a dedicated mentor in your field to provide tailored support throughout your job search journey. From optimizing your resume and application process to mastering your interview skills, their expert guidance prepares you to secure your dream job and to negotiate a competitive salary. The cherry on top is that you don't pay until you secure that high-paying job that you've been aiming for. Don't hesitate. Visit pathrise.com/KenG to get matched with an expert mentor today. This episode of Ken's Nearest Neighbors is brought to you by Z by HP, HP's high compute workstation-grade line of products and solutions. Z is specifically made for high-performance data science solutions, and I personally use the ZBook Studio and the Z8 workstation. I really love that the Z workstations can come standard with Linux or WSL2, and they can be configured with the Data Science Software Stack Manager. With the Software Stack Manager, you can get right to the work of doing data science on day one without the overhead of having to completely reconfigure your new machine. Now back to our show. I think early adoption in AI is fundamentally different than almost all the other early adoption trends that we've seen. Mm-hmm. So let's take crypto. Let's take NFTs. Early adopters, in some sense, had a really good benefit there, and then now it's essentially fizzled out. At least NFTs, they've been killed by generative AI. Yeah. But even of people who are early adopters and using crypto or NFTs or creating them or being active in those markets, there were still some people that were skeptical. Mm-hmm. With AI, I think uniformly, everyone that I've met that's used GPT-4, I don't think that I haven't met a single person that's like, oh, this isn't that great. This isn't going to change how we do business. This isn't going to change these things. And, again, like a lot of people say, oh, the technology isn't that impressive. We're just using transformers in a different way. They're, with more data and all of these things. But to me, the results that you get from working with these large language models and the clear use cases for coding, for content generation, for design and development, for essentially adding speed to any part of a like a project, mm-hmm. It's really hard to argue that those aren't going to have an unbelievable impact in almost anyone's work. I see it directly in my work. I've repeatedly said every single video I make, I'm like, at first it was like 4 or 5 hours a week. Now it's, then it was maybe 10 hours a week that I was saving. And now it's like, I'm doing 3x the work that I was before. Yeah. And it just continually blows my mind that the better I get at using these tools, the more time savings and the more effective I am. Mm-hmm. And I probably couldn't go back to, I could, but it'd be unbelievably hard to go back before I was using these tools.
I know, I'm just like, Ken, you have to read documentation again. You'd be like, no. I refuse to read documentation. Oh, absolutely. Like, I 100% agree with you on that one. It's just like, the difference is so big. And I think the thing is not just us saying that, right? It's not people who are into AI or whatever just saying that. Just look at consumer adoption. Right? That's the clearest trend. Like, you have stuff like crypto and blockchain, like great technologies are being integrated every now and then, and like crypto, but the vast majority of people, their lives are not dramatically changed because of that. But people who aren't even interfacing directly with AI or GPT-4, for example, their lives are still being shaped by it because the consumer products they're using has AI completely integrated into that. Like, if you use any of the Microsoft Suite stuff, there's AI integrated into that. If you use any of the Google Suite stuff, there's AI integrated into that. Adobe, everything's already there. So you are probably using AI tools right now, even if you don't want to be like, even if you're not like specifically wanting to be using those AI tools. And that is the biggest indicator, in my opinion, as to that AI, it's the real deal.
Yeah. Well, I will also say, for the last probably 10 years, we've been using AI tools in social media and any of these things. Mm-hmm. They were just obscured. And now they're directly accessible to us, and the adoption has been so crazy. You look at Duolingo, they have a GPT-4 integration. We were just at the Zendesk conference where they're integrating these LLMs into their customer interface products. And if you think about it, the GPT-4, or the version of the language models that they're using, has really only been around for a couple months.
Yeah.
And it's already being integrated into these like large-scale products. I mean, one, it's a little scary, but it's also just a sort of symbol of how fast this is moving and how much value companies are seeing in this. It's very different, again, from what I was seeing before. I mean, you would see startups try to integrate blockchain. You would see startups try to fool around with NFTs and these types of things. And at some scale, a little bit of larger companies. But you don't see large companies. I don't think I've seen in my career large companies adopting a technology like this rapidly. And, you know, to me, it's just, it's so crazy how fast it's all moving. I mean, we've talked a lot offline about how much we think the world is going to change.
Oh, absolutely. Ken and I have had deep conversations about this. Like the generative AI, man, like that, yeah, we've had like so many discussions about it. And I think we both are saying, really, I would say, would you also say like anybody that you've talked to who has used these technologies relatively extensively have agreed that things are just going to be changing so quickly? We're on like, it's already happening, but we're like on the cusp of everything that's to happen. I think you mentioned you talked to someone who said when the like plugins, for example, for GPT-4 and for ChatGPT also, I think Google's Bard is also going to have plugins as well, right? Whatever it is that they're called. When those things are going to be released, there's going to be just like massive change.
Yeah, I just got a notice that the beta for plugins is going to be released next week to all paid users.
Oh, nice. How come?
I just an email. Yeah, I don't know.
Really? Okay, I gotta check that. I'm pretty sure I signed one because I'm like very, very interested in trying that out.
Yeah. Well, so the person I talked to, they work at a startup that was funded by OpenAI, and they have access to the plugins already. And they were telling me essentially, you can upload a CSV file, and in the code interpreter, which is in the ChatGPT instance, it'll write the code, run the code, and give you the results. And that is, you know, a fairly large portion of what a data analyst does.
Yeah.
And to me, it isn't just that it has that capability. It is that it has that capability within a couple months of coming out. What happens in 6 months? What happens in a year from now?
Yeah.
I mean, I see a lot of progression, particularly in the personal assistant space, where if you can integrate with my calendar, you can run my emails, you can do a lot of these things, alerting. There's a whole lot of opportunity to eliminate friction from a lot of workflows. But there's also, you know, massive markets that could be disrupted by that.
Absolutely.
When you think about all of the virtual assistants that work internationally, you know, what happens if, you know, $20 a month, there's something that can do a large portion of what they've been doing. And it's arguably trained on the things that they've been doing for the last year, for if you've had one before. And to me, that's scary in the sense we have these large scale downstream consequences that are scary. And I also find that online, it's kind of difficult to talk about those. So a lot of the time, you know, I've had a lot of comments that like, hey, we don't, you know, like, I won't listen to anything that is fear mongering. I won't listen to any of these things that are essentially scary about the future that is to come. But I also think that, you know, we are involved in this field. We also are pretty close to the pulse of what's happening. And it's kind of hard for me not to be like intimidated about what the future is. I'm not saying the worst case is going to happen. I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination Terminator is going to happen and we're all going to be taken over. But on the other hand, I also feel like there's probably going to be more change in the next 5 years than there's ever been before, maybe in the course of human history in that short a period of time. And it's really important, as someone with a platform, I think, to talk about how you should be navigating this or thinking about this or the dangers or the opportunities that are present, because that's what I would like to have, right? That's something that's important to me if I was viewing this content. But you also have to draw a fine line around those things too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you and I, we've been creating content ever since the NFT, like the crypto stuff was happening as well. But I don't believe either of us actually created content on that. Have you?
I made I did an analysis of crypto stuff or NFT stuff, but I would never promote any of it because that was something that like I wasn't certain in by any stretch of the imagination. That isn't something I had the direct domain knowledge like I have of this. And you know, there's obviously a ton of stuff that I don't know about these models. It's moving way too fast for me to even keep up with everything. But I feel like this, to me, has significantly more capability to change our individual lives, the shape and the structure of the entire world than any of the additional or like previous insights might have.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Like the point I was trying to make in that is the content creators that you are looking at right now, if you notice that they don't generally follow these trends, but the reason they're harping on the AI stuff, you call it that, harping on it, there's a reason for this. I genuinely believe so. Like for me, I really like taking a more conservative approach to pretty much everything. I always go in from like a more skeptical point of view. Even with when I first started using ChatGPT, I'm like, I don't know about that, right? But it's like you give something a chance and then you see how dramatic it can be, and it is a fine line, absolutely, because if you just like directly say that, I think we both have had some degree of backlash in saying like, the thing, fear mongering, or just saying like this is going to change so many things, but I feel inauthentic not talking about it.
I agree.
Very much so as well. And with me, like authenticity and transparency is their core values of the way that my channel is there. So when people ask me NFT questions, for example, I just directly go like, I don't know, right? Because I don't know enough about that. But with AI, it's like I can't not talk about it to the degree, because I think it's dramatically transforming the workplace right now. I think it's changing the way that people think about their careers. And for people who I don't want to say like if you don't catch on, you're just going to be like, it's going to be really bad. I just think it's really important to at least give it a chance and try to understand that. It really is like a very important technology that's going to be changing so many things, and it's much better to understand than to run away.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I took a very similar stance when I started out with talking about the ChatGPT stuff. I did a couple posts like, hey, this is the extent that I'm going to talk about it. And then GPT-4 dropped, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is so different than the previous GPT-3 version. And I felt like it was responsible of me to make this content. And realistically, if you look at my analytics, my GPT videos, they don't crush it with viewership or any of those types of things. I make them because I found it so useful. And to me, if I'm not making content about it, and it's also what I'm like super excited about right now.
Yeah, like you use it so much. Yeah. How do you not talk about it?
Exactly. I mean, I also see that the content that I've made around data science, I think a lot of it is still useful, but it's probably going to diminish in usefulness over time, because the way that all technical work is done is going to be transformed.
It's fundamentally changed the way that coding works at like the very granular level. Yeah. You don't code the same anymore.
Well, I would say it's almost a progression of how it works, or of how it's been going. You know, I think I might have talked with Mark about this previously, but essentially it's just an extension of programming languages. Essentially you have basic programming languages, or, you know, machine code, then you have a layer over it, which is C, and then you have more interpretable stuff like Java, and then you have Python, which is very close to written language. And then you have ChatGPT, where you just write in written language and then you produce code. And to me, that is the direction programming languages were going anyway. But it is such a quantum leap from the programming languages we were using before that it's very difficult to conceptualize like that, right?
I see what you mean. I see what you mean from that. Yeah, I would say like the way that programming language, I think there is like, for sure, like in progressing, but I do think there is another component of this that previous programming languages, I think it's like such a big difference, because with previous programming languages, whatever is happening is in your own head, right? Or whatever you read on Stack Overflow or something like that. but you're essentially have the knowledge of all the other programmers out there within ChatGPT that's imbuing your code now with their knowledge as well. And I think that is a very different dynamic than the way that I used to code.
Yeah, I mean, I think my analogy breaks down because ChatGPT can be used for so many different things rather than just programming. But we might just be headed more towards a world where there's centralization around a lot of these tools. So you have ChatGPT as an interface for programming languages, coding. You have it as an interface for design, development. You have it as an interface for even word and writing. Maybe you even have it as an interface for reading in some way, where you're directing it to certain resources and it's condensing them or turning them into an audio or visual format and helping you to learn things and understand things in those ways. I mean, to me, that is pretty aggressive jump really, really quickly.
Oh, absolutely. Very, very quickly. I am also interested in seeing the progress of this because ChatGPT opened up the possibility of a lot of things, but we also see a lot of AI startups that are popping up now that directly interface with like GPT-4 or probably BART in the future as well. Mm-hmm. So given that fact, I am interested in seeing like is it going to progress in the sense that people are just going to use tools that plug into AI, or is it going to be centralized onto one thing like ChatGPT? I do think there's dangers for things to be centralized, but I guess like in some ways there's also that whole community talking about open source LLMs versus like closed ones that a lot of big tech companies are developing. So I'm really interested in seeing the progression of that. Don't personally have like a very strong opinion about what's going to happen though.
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing for me is that I don't have any clue what's going to happen. And I have less of a clue what's going to happen than I've had it probably any other period of my life. And when you're in those periods of uncertainty, the question is, how do you plan and how do you understand what the future is? And so, and we've talked a lot. I mean, I'm planning to purchase a farm. I'm actively looking at farms.
Completely serious.
Yeah, dead serious.
I thought you were kidding the first time around, and I'm like, oh man, he's not kidding.
Because, I mean, my philosophy is that in times of great uncertainty, again, not necessarily bad uncertainty, it could be good uncertainty as well, the best way to hedge is with necessities, and people will always need shelter, they'll always need food, and they'll also always need community and companionship.
Healthcare, I would put there as well.
Yeah, probably.
You have to like, not die and stuff.
Well, that's kind of part of community. If you have a doctor in the community, maybe you can get around it, right? And so if I can leverage the skills I've developed or any of the things that I've built now to hedge some of the things and the uncertainty that's coming, that to me is a valuable allocation. I mean, also if you think about the economy and a potential recession looming, this is not financial advice. I don't know anything about that future either. But to me, that makes sense is that, switching back and diversifying just from technology products would be a pretty useful thing. I'm not recommending by any stretch of the imagination that everyone go buy a farm. Actually, please don't. That means there's more farmland for me. But I think that, again, when there is a potential shift coming, that's how I view planning for the future. And I also think the other thing that I'm doing is aggressively upskilling in these technologies and trying to understand them, trying to understand what direction and opportunities there will be in the future. Because in these same times, there's probably the most potential for opportunity for wealth creation as there ever is. And I would encourage everyone to think about that and try to capitalize on it at the very least. Yeah.
I like doing something. I think the implementation can be different. Like for Ken, he's like, I think I'm gonna buy a farm, right? In diversification. But that concept, I actually feel confident in recommending to people. Diversify and upskill. Those two things, you can't really go wrong with that, right? Like upskilling is understanding these new technologies, doing these things in order to know what's happening. If you're like, this is terrible, I hate it, make an educated decision that you hate it and you don't want to do it, right? And then in terms of diversification of income, I really think the combination of factors of the economy, whatever is happening over there. So there are, I mean, this is not me thinking it. There are a lot of layoffs that are happening in tech right now. That's just fundamental facts. Couple that with AI, that makes people far more productive. What ends up happening? Well, they lay people off. And then when people are generally laid off, contractors are usually ones that get hired back, right? And if these contractors, for example, or the people that they still have are able to continue doing what's already happening, perhaps even more because they're far more productive using AI, will they need to hire more full-time employees? Probably not, right? At least even from my own perspective, like I do run a company, it's called Lonely Octopus, which is a self-learning platform that's also very much about like community building. Like the way that I run this company and I realize I don't need to hire more people because I can get the people that I currently have and contractors that I currently have in order to be more productive even. Then it's like just from a business perspective, why do I need to hire someone else?
Yeah. Well, if you look at it globally, there's been a massive growth in the contractor market overall. I mean, some people suggest that's almost entirely where it's going, where it's a world of essentially huge numbers of private contractors that are having the ability to work at multiple places. And there's tremendous benefits to that as well. I mean, if you're thinking about contracting versus a 9-to-5, contracting, I guess you don't have the health benefits that you would have before. But in some sense, you're also hedged from downside in a very unique way, is that you can work at multiple companies. You can have multiple income streams and you have a little bit more freedom over your time to create opportunities for yourself. And I mean, in some sense, both of us kind of work in a contractor space now. It's, in some sense we work for sponsors. We contract for them and produce content that is integrated to our videos. We have the freedom of which ones we work with. If things aren't going well, we don't like how something is structured, we don't have to accept it. But we can also accept, 50 sponsors a year if we really wanted to, if we're making that many videos. And although it is inconsistent, it is pretty reliable in the sense that it'll be very rare that we have no income for a month or for a period of months, unlike if you lost a 9-to-5 job and were completely cut off from something for a long period of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me more about Lonely Octopus. What is it?
Do you like the name? It's interesting.
It's very interesting. Yeah. It tells me very little about the product.
So you're very lonely octopus. Yeah, so let me rephrase.
Am I a lonely octopus?
Everybody's a lonely octopus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm the first lonely octopus though.
Okay.
Yeah, with Lonely Octopus, it's very much like the fundamental core belief I have in Lonely Octopus is about career design. I think in our society right now, for many people, we actually have the tools and the ability of crafting a career that's the best for us. And oftentimes that is not working like a single job. It's very hard, like people have so many passions, right? Like for example, I like to code, I like to do data science, but I also like making videos and I also like reading a lot and I also like writing a lot. It's a tough ask to be like, hey, like 9-to-5 employer, can I do all these things that I love doing within this one job? So I don't believe that this is something that's possible nowadays. So there's that. And then so it's fundamentally about crafting your own career, what you want your lifestyle to be and what kind of career you want to fit into your lifestyle. So with Lonely Octopus, that's like where everything starts. In terms of the method of doing this is a self-learning based approach. So we pretty much design study plans based upon what your dream career is. And that's going to be focused right now on coding and learning data science. And then also focusing on the freelance jobs. So the freelance job is something that we added on with this iteration of Lonely Octopus, primarily because I do think that the contracting and things like that is something that's going to be where the economy is headed as well. So I wanted people to work on real freelance jobs with businesses that we have partnerships with. So it's like with real clients and getting that on their portfolios. And I think the third big thing that I really imbued into Lonely Octopus this time around is very AI focused. I do think coding, for example, and just lots of things is fundamentally changed now with the way that AI is. So all the courses that we have, like Ken and I, we're actually making a course for Lonely Octopus right now, which is based upon how to code using AI, how to do self-learning using AI, how AI fundamentally changes the way that you do things these days. So I want to help people really be able to embrace that technology and then be able to leverage that for their own careers.
So it seems like this is really focused as much as possible on future proofing.
Correct. Yeah.
So
diversification and future proofing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is something that a lot of people lose sight of. They say, oh, I want to learn this tool, I want to learn this shiny thing. And I think there's value in that with AI, but there's also value in thinking about how those tools will be useful in creating value, how these tools will be useful in creating a portfolio or getting you actual experience. There's some of these elements that are really cutting edge and new. And I really like that you're able to integrate some of these in as they go, because that's one of the benefits of it's essentially a cohort, correct?
Correct.
That's one of the benefits of a cohort learning like this. Like, there isn't going to be a legitimate, decent AI, like how to use AI tools course taught in school that is regularly updated in the next 6 months, in the next year. Mm-hmm. The value is, especially if things are moving this fast, that if you see something new, if there's a new development, you can integrate it right away. Mm-hmm. And it's also kind of cool that, you got to learn with everyone about how these things work. And if you're in a cohort, you get to teach each other too.
Yes.
So once you reach a certain level of aptitude, you can sort of say, hey, like, I'm doing this. This could help you all as well. There's tremendous value in that. And I'm excited to see how that sort of turns out for you.
I'm really excited to see as well. We ran our cohort previously. I was genuinely really impressed with the amount of creativity that comes from it when you give people the tools and put them in a community together in which people are aligned in terms of how they see their career and the things they want to do. It's like almost like it's this group-based thing where everybody is able to lift each other up and produce really creative ways of doing things that I, for one, I could never have come up with some of these projects. Yeah, so very much so, like putting people into communities, I think is really important, especially because for most people, like those around you are probably not as interested in AI and learning these tools as you are, so it can be very isolating. Yeah. One of the tenets of why it's called Lonely Octopus. One of the reasons.
Well, it should be called Community Octopus because they won't be lonely after they join the community.
That's part of our slogan, not be lonely. Don't be a lonely octopus.
So technically, who is this for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is something I think this is very important to be clear about. Lonely Octopus isn't about drop everything, learn AI, and do freelance jobs. It really isn't about that. It's about diversification and building up your skills and habitually working towards how you want to see things. So most people from Lonely Octopus do have a full-time job. So it's actually about creating that habit of self-learning and learning. It's kind of a contradiction in some ways. You're self-learning because your journey is fundamentally different than other people's and you have your own custom study plan, but you're doing it with a group of people who are aligned on the ultimate vision of where you want to go. So people generally have a full-time job and other responsibilities, and they're spending around 10 to 20 hours, could be lower, could be higher, focusing on learning coding, learning about AI, and working on these real-world projects. And after the program, it's an 8-week program, but we actually give all the courses lifetime access, all the projects that you earn throughout the cohort as well, lifetime access, because it's not about how fast it is that you go, it's about how consistent you are.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. So I'm interested in, what end goals or how people can approach this, outside of Lonely Octopus better. I mean, both you and I have, in some sense, kind of done that in roundabout ways. And, a lot of people might say, oh, this is, you lucked into it, you stumbled into it, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. But I also think that there's a lot of design that's gone into at least my life, and I'm pretty sure your life from the conversations we've had, that is under the hood. Can you talk a little bit about your process of getting to where you are and maybe the underlying framework? Because I know that that's a little bit more sophisticated than people might people might suspect.
Sophisticated. I like that word. So a large part of my YouTube channel and just my thing is that I think I have more trouble than most in getting myself to do things. And procrastination, I would call myself like the queen of procrastination. It's not that I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Like I have a vision for where I want to be, but I just struggle a lot towards getting there because of my procrastination problem and like fear of failure, all these other issues as well. So I designed a system in which I do things to get myself to do stuff. Very fundamentally, it's pretty much that. Like, how do I design my life in a way that gets me to do the things that are important? For me, it has a lot to do with like my live streams. So I live stream 2 hours, not as consistent now, but I used to be very consistent 3 times a week. And I show up. All I have to do is show up. There's other people keeping me accountable with stuff that I'm working on. If I show up and I'm live streaming myself, I can't just be like sleeping or watching anime, right? So that's how literally how I got myself to be able to get to the point in which I could quit my job and then pursue the things that I'm doing right now. I really think so, like 100%. If I didn't have these live streams that I've done, no way I could have gotten to where I am. Another one of the examples of this, I think I might have told you. So I like lock my fridge because intermittent fasting is really helpful for me in order to be productive. But I also really like food and I have no self-control. So what I do is I lock my fridge and put it in a timed box and I set it until 12 p.m.
You put your entire fridge in a timed box?
No. There's fridge locks, right? Okay. And I put the keys of the fridge lock into a timed box.
That's very impressive to put your whole fridge in.
Just like my entire fridge into a box. But yes, I put the keys in there, in which the fridge, I cannot get the keys until 12 p.m. every single day. So that's how I get myself to fast.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I do these things, I guess you call them like environment design, if you will, because I have no willpower and self-control.
So in some sense, Lonely Octopus is a couple things. So the first, I would imagine, do you help people design or understand what their dream career is? Is that a component? And then you go into, okay, how do you design a routine, habits, a schedule for getting to that future that you want? And then you have the community that supports those things. Did I miss any part of it? I mean, obviously the AI and technology and whatever it might be. But
yeah. I think fundamentally, yes. I do want to specify that I cannot tell you what your vision should be, right? I can be like, Ken, your goal in life is to go buy a farm. Like you came up with that yourself, right? So I think what's really important and people that we look for Lonely Octopus as well, it's like you don't have to exactly know what you want, but you need to have a vision for how you want to shape your life. And then with there, we reverse engineer that into a study plan. Obviously, a study plan is not going to cover everything, but that's how you really get started. And there's this idea about keystone habits, which is like if you have a habit, you start doing that, you're able to start changing many aspects of your life. It's like a rippling effect. So I do want to help people make that consistent self-studying into their keystone habit in order to just change the way that their life is shaping up to go towards the vision that they have. So a lot of the things that I figured out, like the career design, like all of these anti-procrastination stuff, I pretty much put all of that into Lonely Octopus. So I'm like, if someone as bad as me, so I'm just like, all my issues, like all the things, I try to put that into Lonely Octopus as much as possible. Because I do know that clearly people also struggle with the same things I do. That's why I have subscribers who watch these videos, for example. But yes, fundamentally so, yeah.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, this is a huge part of Tina's life. She basically just reads books about how to not be broken productivity-wise.
Pretty much.
And then we also talk about them because I also love these books. I think I probably have slightly less of an issue with getting started. I don't need as much overhead, but everyone needs a kick. I mean, nobody's perfect. I mean, I do some really weird stuff.
Let's share about that.
No, it's fine. Okay, fine. I'll spill some beans. So I got really into self-hypnotism recently.
I lock my fridge. Yeah, you just hypnotize yourself.
And I promise it's not as weird as you think. Andrew Huberman has a thing on hypnotism, but I'm a huge believer that we act directly in line with our identity. So if I identify as someone or believe myself to be someone that is a healthy individual, what does a healthy individual do? They make healthy choices when they're confronted between an unhealthy choice and a more healthy choice. And I believe that in some sense, hypnotism or just talking to yourself, affirmation, whatever it might be, can be a tool to ingrain that identity so that you act in line with it. So if every day I'm telling myself things like that, one of the biggest things for me is that I have a bias towards action. I constantly remind myself of that in various different ways. If I'm constantly reminding myself of that, and I firmly believe that's part of who I am, I'm going to act that way significantly more than if that wasn't at the front of my mind all the time. And to me, that's essentially what hypnotism is putting things that are important to you at the front of your mind so that you see opportunities associated with them, as well as that you act on those behaviors consistently over time. And so I'm sure you would agree, essentially all of personal development is making small, better choices consistently. It's, do I reach for, like the fruit or the candy bar if I'm confronted with two options? I mean, your option would be to like have someone fight you if you got the candy bar.
I just locked it, no candy bar.
Yeah, but I think that, I mean, this might be an oversimplification, but to get exactly what you want out of life, I think you just you would just win every single little battle that you had. So it's, I don't want to work on this project. And the options are work on this project or not work on this project. And if you just worked on the project and did the thing that would have the benefit and didn't do the thing that would detract in all those little small scenarios, you'd be in an incredibly good spot. I still am probably like 70% where I'm doing the right things. And that's gotten me to a pretty good spot, I think. But if you just get it up to like 75% or 80% of the right decisions, you're like, wow, I made a lot of growth in a year. Wow, I bought 2 farms instead of 1 farm.
That's the goal. We'll check in a year.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I have to start get up from 70 to 85%, and those are made up. I might be at like 50%. You never know. I should probably track these things. But I mean, realistically, you have hundreds, maybe thousands of those little decisions every day, and just winning those little battles, or even not having them. Like if your identity is such that isn't even an option, you might, you might be like conditioned to not even have to have the mental energy of fighting with those. Like, what was it? For example, like soda. I don't drink soda at all. And I don't do that because I basically view it as like poison to me, or even alcohol now. I used to have a reasonable amount of drinks and enjoy that, but now I know for a fact that alcohol disrupts my sleep. It definitely makes me really fat. And there are some of these other things where it just has negative consequences for me in terms of losing a day of work, or if I'm hungover, or any of these types of things. And I have essentially in my mind associated alcohol with being poison for my productivity and a lot of the quality of life factors. And so if I'm confronted with, hey, like, maybe I'll have a beer tonight, there is no hesitation or there's no real thought that's a non-starter for me. And the more of those relationships you could create where I don't do that, I'm the type of person that does these types, I'm the type of person that exercises or trains or whatever it is every day, the less friction you have and the more mental capacity you have for other things. This is your podcast. I apologize, I just went on a giant tirade.
This is our conversations in general, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, I absolutely agree with you on that. It really is about that. It's like if you have some sort of vision and you align yourself and you make your choices as well based upon what it is, right? It's like, does drinking alcohol get you to your goal, like about your health? Probably not, right? So it's like, that's not the right choice. So are you someone that wants to reach that or not? Like one of my favorite quotes, don't know who it is the fact like the most scariest were like, really was like the scariest thing. Shoot, I forgot what it was. But it was something about like the scariest thing that could happen where like the most like profound things that could happen is like, say when you die, the person that you are meets the person you could have been.
Oh, it's Goggins.
Is it Goggins?
Yeah.
Oh, is it? So that really gets me, right? Because I'm like, I would be so sad if the person who I could have been, I'm like, damn, I could have been this person. And instead I'm the person who I am now. So I really want to close that gap as much as possible. is at least that we currently know of, we have this one life that we're living that I have control over, and I want to be able to live that towards the vision that I have for myself.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that the person you could have been, it's not just career, it's not just health, it can also be, family, community. There's all of these things that you're probably capable of in the best version of yourself. And, it's an unattainable goal, but it's also something to strive for. I mean, I think unattainable goals are some of the most valuable to strive for, because if you know the goal is unattainable, you fall in love with the pursuit of the process as well. And that to me is something that is very hard for a lot of people. They're like, oh, that's unattainable, why would I do it? And they just lose out on the whole enjoyment of pursuing something that's difficult or impossibly hard. And, I would hope everyone can experience that strife at some point. but something that baffles me, and I do it, is that why do we not always do things that are in our own best interest, even if we want to do them? For example, I love making YouTube videos. It's fun. Even scripting, all of these types of things. And there are times where I'm just like, I would rather do nothing than make this YouTube video. Or you have these little conversations with yourself, you have these little things, and it's like, I enjoy this, and I still am hesitant to do it. I've always battled with myself around those types of things. And it's not like I don't have downtime. It's not like I'm overwhelmed by the amount of work that I have to do. It's just you're confronted by these things that are good for you and that are fun, and you still have hesitation. And I think the ultimate in self-actualization is not having that, is completely eliminating those thoughts. But those might also never go away. So who knows?
Or overcoming them,
Yeah.
right? There's a book called The Mountain Is You, which is basically saying you are your worst enemy. It's like that self-sabotage is a big component. Obviously, there's other components as well. But oftentimes, we're almost like afraid of the people that we can be. We're literally afraid of success, which is really interesting. I personally, to be honest, I didn't think it was a great book, but the concept of it, I did like.
Nicole read it recently.
Oh, really?
She recommended it to a bunch of her friends.
Huh?
She recommended it to a bunch of her friends.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It was a bit like wishy-washy for my personal taste.
Not enough data.
Yeah, not enough data. I'm like, how'd you know that? How do you? But it's a good concept to understand. Like there's literally sometimes there's like a fear of success. And I mean, I don't know why, like maybe I should have read the book better. But like I 100% agree with you on that one. It's like, there's like a lot of things that you know that you should be doing, but you just like don't do them for whatever reason it is. And I mean, that's the reason why I do things like live streams, right? Like I know I should be doing things, so I have to force myself to do the things that are good for me. It's why I lock my fridge. Like eating a bag of Lay's chips is not gonna help me achieve my goals.
Yeah, I completely agree. Unless your goal is to eat as many Lay's chips over the course of your life.
That's true. I mean, it kind of is, but then that would detract from my other goals.
Yeah. Well, I think that's also a really important of lifestyle design, is figuring out, just like your values, what conflicts, but also your goals, are they aligned with each other? That to me has been something I personally struggle with, because I have a lot of goals, there's a lot of things that I want to do, but in theory, any goal that I have that is separate from my other goals detracts from them, because I have to take time away from certain goals to do other things. I mean, let's take jiu-jitsu. I love training jiu-jitsu, I want to train as much as I can, but in some sense I only have a certain number of hours in the day. And if I train every day for 2 hours, then I spend less time with my girlfriend. I'd like to have a good relationship. That's a goal of mine. I maybe can't work as much. Maybe I'm also tired because I'm physically training quite a bit. So there's a lot of challenges that I face associated with that goal alignment. What's that? Hi.
Hi.
Can you come back later, please? Más tarde, por favor.
Okay.
Gracias.
Venga.
Amazing. Didn't know you speak Spanish.
¿Qué horas?
2 horas, si es posible o no.
Sí, porque yo salgo a las 5.
4:30 es okay or no? Tony, you can leave a little bit of that in, me speaking Spanish. I'm kind of like octolingual if you include Python and Java and JavaScript and C. And literally, I guess all languages now with ChatGPT.
Oh yeah, true. It's all language agnostic now.
Yeah.
How's your Chinese?
So none.
Oh.
你好. 我很好, you know.
For anybody that doesn't know, Ken is half Chinese.
Yeah. Well, my dad doesn't speak Chinese either, so he's also a disappointment. And he's Chinese.
And he's like Chinese, full Chinese.
Yeah, he was born in China. And I make fun of him every day. But I also can't speak, so I could even make more fun of him.
If you could speak.
If I could speak. That might be insane. So that's actually something I've been thinking about trying to do with my parents, is try to learn another language with them. Mm-hmm. So I'm reading this Outlive book, which is really good, highly recommend. But it's all about increasing lifespan as well as health span, and something that in theory could improve the quality of life and cognitive capacity as you get older, is learning a new language or picking up a new skill. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be a really cool way to grow, closer with my parents or keep a good relationship with them, acquire a skill, and also help them to stay sharp as they get older. Mm-hmm. If I do that or not, that's something, but I think it'd be really nice. It'd be kind of fun.
Learn Chinese.
Yeah. Maybe I'll teach them how to code, and that would be there.
No, you should learn Chinese.
Hey, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see. What else do you have going on? Obviously, you're working super hard on Lonely Octopus, but what else is coming up in the pipeline? What can we expect?
So Lonely Octopus is definitely, if not like the biggest, well, content creation is always going to be like up there. So I would say it's always content creation, always Lonely Octopus. I think except for that, from like, that's like work perspective, from like a personal level, I am really looking forward to traveling a lot more. So I do want to do the digital nomad thing for a while. I kind of want to like get that out of my system as well before I potentially have a family and settle down and things like that. I mean, pretty much everything else is very similar. Like I read a lot. That's just part of like my habits and things like that. I live a very boring life, Ken. Like I really do. Like, I don't.
That's why
go
we're such
out.
good friends.
I know. I'll be like, Ken, you want to talk about like a book on Friday night? Yeah, sure.
Although Nicole and I went out last night for the first time probably since before COVID.
Oh wow.
We went to a bar. So last night, 2 nights ago, we went and saw the Tech Roast show. So they were obviously on the podcast, and we went and saw an episode which you were invited to, but you just bailed on us, which is cool.
You were the one that told me the wrong day. No, I'm kidding. I was so sad. I saw the pictures. It looked really fun.
Yeah, I mean, they were really good. They were super nice. They invited us to sort of after party after, and I was really glad I went. It was great to just like meet people. Or meet them in person.
IRL, right? See people.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, it was way too late. I would have probably preferred like lunch.
That's how you know you're getting old. Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah.
How's your back, Ken?
So I also trained jiu-jitsu this morning, and I'm in shambles. I got like strangled, so my neck is a little rough. I got some mat burn on my face, and I threw out my lower back. It was just overall not a great showing, but it's worth it. Yeah, I think so. I'll have one of Tina's friends poke me with some needles to fix it. So we'll see how that goes. I think that's it. What else? How can people learn more about you? I mean, they probably know you if they watch this show, but how can they learn more about Lonely Octopus and the opportunities there?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, check out my YouTube channel, Lonely Octopus. So applications are closing on May 15th, which is probably before this is going to be released.
This is going to come out 2 Wednesdays from now.
2 Wednesdays from now.
I could maybe move it up.
Okay, yeah, but then you can always sign up for the wait list if you want to learn more. Also, the website is www.lonelyoctopus.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tina.
Thank you.